I care about this community as well as all the rest of the communities that are facing this similar processes that Port Washington is going through. So just to kick us off here, this is a picture about a month ago from Fox 6 News of the current construction site over at Port Washington. It is big, it is gnarly. I have to drive past the Beaver Dam one every time I come anywhere when I'm traveling, and that one's gross, this one's absurd. So, just from a water quality standpoint, the runoff, the ground erosion, all of it is crazy to me. So, who am I? As I said, my name is Amanda Bell. I was a hydrologist with the U.S. Geological Survey for 24 years. I missed 25 years by about 7 months because I left during Doge. I saw them taking science away, I saw them taking regulations away, and I wasn't going to stand before any more of it and be a part of it. So I decided to leave, and that's actually why I'm running for Congress. So a hydrologist is somebody who studies water. It's somebody who basically is a water scientist. In my case, my specialty was the effects of human influences such as land use, especially the urban development and urbanization of the land, and how those affects the ecological systems in rivers and streams from California to the Carolinas. So that's literally what I did as my job for 25 years. Then I became the deputy director, so I did the management oversights for our 3-state office, and I was in charge of the logistics and operations for that. So, also part of my career, I was the National Ecological Sampling Coordinator, where I managed large teams of scientists that went coast to coast and sampled at least, our core sites were 112 sites between all 50 states, and I managed all the logistics and training and all of that for that project. And again, as I said, the effects of human activity on water quality and aquatic ecosystems. So what I want to do tonight is I just want to tell you what the data shows. I'm not here to cast judgment on the project. I'm simply here to give you a scientific baseline of what the data is, what the water is now, and in the recent past, so that you can make informed decisions as community members. Oops. Just okay. So, the construction's already underway.
We noticed.
Yeah, right, right. So, right now they're talking about just shy of 700 acres. We have 672 acres that are in active construction. Vantage estimates this to be a $15 billion project from start to finish. From Vantage data that they reported to the DNR, they currently have 3,500 employees on site. I can neither confirm nor deny what that is, but that is what they put in their permits to the DNR. So, I have not seen an updated number. The plan is that the project will be completed in 2028, and it is less than 1 mile from the Lake Michigan drinking water intake for the city. So, just want you to keep that in mind when you're looking as the crow flies, it's a mile away. One thing I thought was really interesting when I was digging into this is that the stormwater permit for the project was finally approved on December 11th. And when they had the groundbreaking ceremony on December 22nd, exactly 11 days later, the Ozaki Press noted that construction was well underway. So I'm just gonna leave that out there. So what is in the water now and what happens next? All right, so I'm gonna go over a few terms you're gonna see tonight, because full admission, I came from the government. My alphabet soup as far as like government jargon is deep. So I wanna make sure that I'm not throwing out acronyms and the alphabet soup that comes from all of the different chemicals and everything that I'm gonna talk about tonight. So if you see MCL, that is the maximum contaminant level. that is a legal level from the EPA. That is their considered safe drinking water standard. And a water system, whether private or public, is in compliance if it is below that maximum contaminant level. So that is, you'll see stuff for lead, for nitrates, for PFAS, and all those things. So then there is the maximum contaminant level goal. So that is what the EPA would like it to be at. So this is the absolute maximum. If anything is above that, don't drink the water. This is their goal. So for the most part, most of the times those are the same, but sometimes the EPA goes and adjusts their maximum contaminant level goal, and they'll reduce it. So that way it's more safe for drinking water. So that's the difference between that. Then if you see a health guideline, there is an environmental working group. It's a private, or it's a nonprofit company that looks through all of the water quality data, does summaries, and what they found from their research is that the health guidelines are usually lower than the EPA guidelines, but this is where this is people who work in the healthcare facility, who work in water quality, who have studied the effects of all these chemicals. This is the guideline that they would actually recommend for that maximum contaminant level goal if you're going to be drinking the water frequently. So then there's PFAS, and I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about PFAS if you're interested in any sort of water quality stuff. So PFAS is those per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. So those are the forever chemicals. They don't degrade. Most of the time chemicals will degrade into a more stable system, but PFAS and PFOS do not. So interestingly, well, we had a goal, and just in the last 2 weeks there was a pullback of the regulations from the DNR. We had a goal of an actual level that they were going to put out there. Is this is the level that everybody has to be under for PFAS and PFOS from the EPA, and that regulation was pulled back just in the last 2 weeks from the EPA. So,
Wow.
yep, not great. Not great.
Can I just ask one question? You're
Yes.
talking about city water. A lot of us are in well water.
Yes, so I actually, in this, I've got city water summaries and well water summaries. So I'm gonna cover both.
Thank you.
But knowing about the forever chemicals is one of those things that no matter who drinks water or where you get it from, you're gonna wanna know about. One of the things about the forever chemicals is they're linked to a lot of health concerns, including cancers, thyroid disease, immune suppression, and then they're finding a lot of birth defects, especially where there's high levels of PFAS. So again, that 4 nanogram per liter goal is no longer a goal. Then I'm going to take you all the way back to high school chemistry. We're going to talk about nanograms per liters, micrograms per liters, and then milligrams per liter. So most of the time we're going to talk about parts per billion. That's what most of the stuff is calculated in. But I promise I won't drag you too far down into all the chemical, like what is nanograms per liter versus micrograms per liter. But one thing I will say is I've got a health guideline of 0.6 micrograms per liter, and the result is 1.2. That's 20 times the health guideline. So you'll see that result. Not a great way. Okay, so let's talk about some PFAS. And the first part of this is what's in Port Washington water, like the city's tap water. So there's already PFAS in the water. And this is data, I should back up, this is data from DNR, from EPA that the city has submitted. This is the city's data. So it's publicly available. Everything I'm presenting today is all publicly available data with no speculations. It is just what's already there. Yes, sir?
Oh, Kurt, use that.
So this one,
Looks like 23.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think this value was from 2023.
April
23.
Yes.
Left center.
Yes, there we go. And it goes up and down, but for the most part, we already have, if we think about that 4 nanograms per liter limit goal that EPA set, that's 92% of the way there already. So it's one way to think about it. Some of the things that these compounds are linked to, like I said, cancer, autoimmune disorders, reproductive concerns, and liver, kidney, and thyroid diseases. So, what's the big deal? It's below the current goal, right? Well, independent research has actually shown that the true least limit is 0. Ultimately, we want to get PFAS and PFOS out. But my concern on this is that data centers have openly discussed how they are using PFAS and PFOS in refrigerants. They're very popular in fire retardants. That's one of the reasons we actually found out about it, is because it was being used as a fire retardant, especially on military bases. And they just, if there's a fire, they just hose like PFAS down, because it works really great. It's also in our Teflon. So if you have Teflon pans, might want to switch out. But it's also in stuff like your receipts. If you get receipts that are like the heat transfer receipts, yeah, those are just coated in PFAS. So it's stuff like that. If it's waterproof, fire retardant, or has any sort of like, hey, how come your carpet doesn't get dirty? That's all PFAS. So you gotta find ways to do those things without using chemicals that are going to affect our health as much. Again, this, I was working on this before they reduced or took away the regulations. So, but data centers use them a lot. They use PFAS for cleaning, fire retardant, and all these things. So adding that additional industrial user to a system that's already at 92% would concern me if I was a consumer of that drinking water. So, all right, these are, again, this is in drinking water in Port Washington right now. Lead is at 5.9 micrograms per liter, which is 29 times the recommended health guideline. EPA says that the guideline is 0. Their goal is 0 lead, because we know that lead causes all sorts of problems with our neurological system. It causes brain damage, especially in children, birth defects, all sorts of issues with lead. So the action level is higher, but the goal is 0. And EPA is actually reducing their action level from 15 down to 10 next year, hopefully. One interesting thing I want to mention about the lead is USGS was the organization that actually found out, we studied the water in Flint, and we were the ones that were like, hey, there's a problem here. This lead is really high. You might have an issue. You should probably swap out your lead pipes and, make sure you're doing water testing beforehand. So the USGS was the ones that were actually raising the alarm before it got really bad. So one interesting thing about the city of Port Washington is they received a grant to go through and test all of their lines, their water lines, but there's still approximately 1,100, I think it's 1,100 service line going out to the public that have not been tested as far as if they're lead or other material. So we also don't know what the water is being carried by in the city. So want to put that out as a caveat. I'm not saying that that's lead lined, but there's still 1,100 service lines that have not been officially verified as to the material that they're in. All right, then PCE. And I'm not going to say that word. I'm going to mess it up, so we're just going to call it PCE. PCE is a industrial solvent. It's frequently used in dry cleaning, but at that level, that's a high level for an industrial compound that is only only really used in dry cleaning. But TCE, which is another compound that's closely related, started showing up. Hello, come on in, come on in. We're not like that. Keep coming. So TCE, which is closely related, is began being detected in 2024. So just 2 years ago, this whole new compound was detected that it's kind of interesting. We're like, I don't know where they're coming from, but it is a dry cleaning and industrial degreasing chemical. So it finally showed up the first detection of it was in 2024, and then it showed up in the tap water in 2025. So, again, both of these are within the legal limits of the maximum contaminant load, but this is above the health guideline by almost 20, and that's above the health guideline by almost 30. So. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is disinfection byproducts. When you get water out of the ground, usually it doesn't have a lot of organic material. Many municipalities use groundwater in Wisconsin, but Port Washington has the incredible benefit of being right on Lake Michigan. The downfall of getting your drinking water from Lake Michigan is that it has a lot higher organic matter when you're bringing it in to drink. And that is all the little, in the lake, if you go in there and you scoop a pail of water, a cup of water, all that fluffy stuff that's floating around in there, that's all organic matter. What happens when you try to disinfect it, or you put chlorine in there, or bromine is another very closely related compound or chemical that they use for disinfection, it has a chemical reaction with that organic material that creates another chemical called there's a bunch of different ones. There's TTHMS and all these, but basically we just call them disinfectant byproducts, because depending upon the chemicals that they're using, depending upon the organic matter, it'll shift between some of these other chemicals. Why is that a problem? Well, these are all known to cause all sorts of really terrible, and I don't even have it listed on here, really terrible health concerns. We're talking like a lot of reproductive cancers, a lot of gastrointestinal cancers have been linked to disinfectant byproducts. Again, birth defects, autoimmune disease, all of these things are closely linked to this, to using chlorine and bromine to treat the water. Filtering, you have to filter it, you have to clean up as much as you can for that before it's treated, but even doing the filtering, you don't always get all the organic matter out of there. One of the things I want to point out here is they have missed their target of disinfectant byproducts several times.
Who has missed it?
City of Port Washington. So when they are submitting their reports, they're saying, hey, our disinfectant byproduct levels are above the legal limit. It happened, the most recent one was in 2021, which means that they are trying to keep up with it, but I do want to note that there's already somewhat concerns. Why does this matter as far as the data center? Guess what data centers also use to make sure the water is clean? Chlorine and bromine. I mean, again, bleach is an incredibly effective disinfectant. Like, it will kill it, right? Which is what we want if we're talking about drinking water. But it's not what we want if we're talking about the chemicals that can form during that cleaning process. So, and again, this is a unique problem for Port Washington because they get their drinking water from Lake Michigan. So, I think that's all I wanted to say. All right, so now we're moving to the private wells. Thankfully, if you have well water in the area, right now your water's pretty good. I'm gonna say it's pretty good. There's a few concerns. We have sometimes higher nitrate levels. Arsenic is usually a problem in this area, and again, lead is another thing that we could be concerned with. So like this one, that's an order of magnitude. We're talking 10 times the recommended levels. Arsenic is also double. These are in private wells. So this data is from, there's two sources I get my well data. One is from the State Lab of Hygiene. If you take samples and send them to the State Lab of Hygiene, they get uploaded into the Wisconsin Groundwater Network, and the data goes in there so that it can be compared to other people's data, right? You can compare it to other people's well records. So this is all, these are all from private land or private well owners that put in their data or sent it to the State Lab of Hygiene. The other place I get my data, especially for wells, is from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. Throw a pitch out for there because it's not my alma mater. But they have a really great groundwater sampling or really great groundwater program. And they do well testing, like they do private well, or testing for private wells. So their data doesn't show the well specifically, but they will show like, hey, this area has a concern of high nitrates, or this area has a higher natural arsenic level, or whatever that is. So they will do those testing. So there, unfortunately, I looked specifically, I should say, I looked at the town of Port Washington as kind of like, not the city, but the town limits, because again, the city all has that public water supply. But there was sadly only 286 private wells. So I'm gonna encourage people right now to, like, if you're on a private well, test your well. I'll do another plug. Pardon?
So how often should you test your well if you test them?
So I personally, I'm on a private well out in Columbia County, and I personally test my well at least every 5 years. And that's, we tested it when we bought it, and we've been there 6 years, so we're a year overdue, but.
Is most of this data coming from people that have their wells tested when they purchase the house? I know we did.
Yes, many of them, yes.
Okay.
That's where many of these samples are coming from.
And would you recommend doing it more often now with the data center being open?
I will say the testing is expensive. To get a full suite, it's almost $1,000. So maybe not doing it. Maybe you could rotate with your neighbors. Be like, hey, I'll test this year if you test next. Because at least that way it's going to be relatively similar, instead of having, 4 houses down the line. I'll do it 1 year and then nobody does it, 6 months from now or a year from now. But even like having that communication within your neighborhood and trying to organize how to navigate the expensiveness of the testing.
One thing we kind of thought was, if the water does go bad because of the data center, you have that record
Yes.
at your house saying that this was my water now.
Yep. Yes.
But does that have to be done for every house?
I personally would do a baseline at my house, just so I could say I sampled this the same way and everything. So, I mean, it's definitely I think it's a good idea to get a baseline. So on one of my later slides, it's a whole list, and it like tells you what, like, you can get them tested by private companies. And there's a whole list from the DNR of where you can go to get your water tested and what all different tests you can do. If you go through either the State Lab of Hygiene or the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, these are definitely things that you can get on there. But I've got the list of other information, like other tests that will come with that. It's like a metals panel and a homeowner's panel. So it's like, I think one of them is like 30 different compounds, and one of them is like 15. So we know nitrate is usually high. I mean, I grew up on a dairy farm, so I understand where the nitrate's coming from, but it's also coming from wastewater, it's coming from fertilizers on private lawns, golf courses, all of those things. But we have a nitrate problem in Wisconsin, yes. So, one thing I want to point out on here is this PFAS panel. So this is I believe it is a trailer park community that has a shared well. They did a PFAS panel on their shared well in just, I think it was just in the last like 2 weeks the data showed up. I was like, this is awesome. And they did the full 18 compound screen that they sample for PFAS. This is on the south side of Port Washington, so it's like 4 miles as the crow flies from the data center. But at the same time, we at least have a baseline. I mean, it's not necessarily total pre-construction, but it's construction, right? And it's the most recent sample. The other interesting thing is that this well in particular has been sampling yearly since 1992. So I'm gonna say kudos to that community because that's a really great data set. As a scientist, I'm like, dang, what I would do for 30 years of data. I joking, not joking, I was like, this is amazing, this data set. So I really do think though that even though it's 4 miles away, I think it's a really good baseline to know if when stuff starts to happen, or when they start gearing up, you will have that baseline and scientific proof that the water's changed. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about and I'm going to caveat this. This is what an open letter from Beaver Dam City Council gave to one of the residents affected with the Beaver Dam data center. This is the open letter stuff that the City Council said is what the Beaver Dam metadata center has told them that they're going to be using in the data center. That caveat goes to, I do not know what Vantage is planning to use as far as chemicals, but these are industrial standards that that a lot of centers are using. So, first off, we've got coolants. So we're talking the stuff that you would put in your car to keep your car cool, ethylene glycol or propylene glycol. Those are the two most common ones that are used for the coolants. Ethylene glycol is highly toxic. Like, don't let your dog anywhere near your car when you're changing your coolant because they drink it, they will die. Like, it's very, very toxic. It's also can damage kidneys, nervous system, and heart. So it is not good. Next is the corrosion inhibitors. Those are your nitrites, your molybdates, and your phosphates. And those are used as, they're used so that their pipes don't rust. I mean, if you're running water through metal, you want to make sure your pipes aren't rusting.
Is this the closed loop thing that they're supposed to be having? Did they run through that?
This is probably, again, I don't know exactly the ones that Vantage is going to use, but this is what the metadata center in Beaver Dam has listed. But corrosion inhibitors, coolants, biocides, all of these things, these are common additives if you're using water in any sort of coolant system. Like, even if you're using it in your boiler system in a building, or, if they're using like water to cool or heat a building. So, okay, so biocides. We talked a little bit about the chlorine, bromine. Glutaraldehyde is a highly carcinogenic. Yes, feel free. Glutaraldehyde is highly carcinogenic. It's actually a preservative that when I was doing water samples, I'd use glutaraldehyde instead of formaldehyde to preserve the samples that I was taking. So we already have byproduct, or disinfectant byproduct elevated levels in the tap water. Adding more in a system that's going to need to make sure they don't have algae growing is probably not gonna help the system, or help the problem. Then we've got our PFAS. As I mentioned, we've got our refrigerants, our fire retardants, electronics coating. One thing that I found out is they actually spray it on like their metal I-beams. And in doing that, it helps them so that when they put it in concrete, they put their I-beams and stuff in the concrete and the floors, that it doesn't like rust and cause the concrete to sweat and all this stuff. It's like, great, we're literally putting it in the ground. This is lovely. So, and they're adding PFAS to the concrete so that it doesn't sweat as well. Yes?
I also heard that they use PFAS or PGAS in the production of chips.
Oh, I'm
which
sure.
are all over that place.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm
So
sure.
they're coming in on that.
Yeah.
coming in on that.
Yeah. So with construction, we've got the ammonium nitrate. I'm not sure how much dynamiting and blasting they're using, but I know in Beaver Dam, they had to do a lot of dynamiting and blasting to get down to bedrock. They actually are filling in several wetlands to be able to put the data center there. So they had to get down to the bedrock to be able to put in pilings. But once you have blasting and concrete polymers, I don't know if you know, but concrete is carries very high levels of mercury as well. So, again, this 4 active stormwater permits, this is for the Beaver Dam area, I believe. That's for the Beaver Dam one. So, and then you've got your backup fuel. I think they're talking about 45 generators on the Port Washington site, or is it more?
That's right.
Yes.
DC generators.
Gas, not diesel.
No, they're diesel.
Oh, I was gonna say both.
Yeah.
Even better. I mean, let's just hit it both ways, right? So concerns there could be contaminants as far as the spill when they're refueling, and then the diesel organics in the groundwater would be a major concern I would have. You definitely don't want to get petroleum into your groundwater system. A lot of the research that
If it goes into the groundwater, is that likely to affect wells?
yes, if there's a spill, it'll affect wells. One of the studies that I didn't work directly on it, but it was one of my employees was managing, was the Bemidji oil spill up in Bemidji, Minnesota. That was from like 30 years ago. Like we're going way back, right? And they're still finding 30 years later petroleum contaminants in wells that they have been pumping and trying to clean up for 30 years. So it's still an issue. Now, actually, the science on that is super cool. I'd love to get into it. But the nerd in me always wants to go deeper into the science. All right, so what does this mean for the Port Washington system? So right now, the city itself, the drinking water uses the city tap water consumes about 1.5 million gallons per day. That is data from the city, and that consumption is straight from Lake Michigan. Again, this is based on data from the city. They have a capacity of 4 million gallons a day for the treatment of their wastewater treatment plant. However, the industry standard right now is about 5 million gallons per day for a large data center, a hyperscale data center water use. I'm just gonna let that sit for a minute.
It doesn't make sense.
So, the other thing I want to go back to, right now, City of Port Washington, again, this is their information, has about 68 miles of pipe infrastructure, water mains, and there's about 1,000 service lines that have unknown pipe material. So we don't know if they're lead, we don't know if it's clay, we don't know if it's whatever, transporting that water.
Are they doing a survey on it?
I believe they're working on it.
Yeah, I had mine tested a couple, yeah, you can get yours tested for free. I had mine done a couple weeks ago.
What can you have tested?
Your city water line,
To determine
the makeup of the
the
material.
makeup of it. So why is that a problem? If the data center is pulling from the city water and not from Lake Michigan directly, which admittedly, if they pulled from Lake Michigan directly, they would need to talk to the Canadian government, and I don't think they're going to do that. Because all of the water in the Great Lakes is actually internationally owned. That's another. I have so many stories. Yes.
Does that number include the water that's used by the power plant, or does they have their own intake?
That I don't know for sure. I'm assuming that the power plant has their own intake,
Because if
but
they
I don't know
use
for
their
sure.
capacity, that's more water usage,
Mhm.
and more water flow back into the Michigan.
Yeah.
They requested to drill 4 more wells,
Mm.
so would that, do you think that's to reduce the capacity of city public water that they use? Or,
Probably. If they're drilling wells, then I'm assuming that means that the city probably doesn't have the capacity to treat the water coming in and to be able to give it to them. Do you know more about that?
To be clear, they're not drilling new wells, they're converting 4 existing wells to high capacity wells, which means 60 gallons per minute plus.
Is that just for construction?
Yeah, it's claimed to be just for construction, that they'll be abandoned after construction. I don't know what the enforcement mechanism on that is, maybe you do.
How is that gonna affect people like us that have
Yeah.
wells?
And I think
Yeah, if they're taking that
we're all
water.
well people this end of the
Yeah.
table. And I think we're all just simply worried that we're gonna turn the tap on one day and nothing's gonna come out.
I will say that
At
is
that
what's
time,
happening in
It's
Beaver Dam.
Really, really late.
It's also happening in Georgia.
Happening in Georgia. In Beaver Dam, there's 3 wells that are adjacent to the data center that have gone dry. There is another one that the woman just called me last week and said, I've got air pockets, what do I do? And I'm like, hope
I
and
thought
pray.
Vantage was supposed to, there were wells on the property, and they were supposed to have capped all those wells.
They capped most of them, but 4 of them they're preserving, and
But they were told to cap all of them.
They were told to.
the story is they're gonna do that eventually.
Well, they should do it now.
Well, now they're converting them to high capacity instead
But
of,
they've got the city water now, haven't they? Cause they took all the pipes up,
Yeah.
LL and gave them city water, so why would they need the wells anymore? Even if they need water for construction.
why would they need?
Because they have 5,000 people living there.
They have an extra million gallons
No, they're not there yet.
they're gonna use.
3,000 are coming in the next 9 weeks. That's amazing.
And that'll make it up to 5,000.
So that is, yes, all of those concerns. And what happens when they're using more water than the city can take in to be able to provide for the residents themselves?
We won't have any more.
Yep.
Our house is unlivable.
So, supposedly, Vantage has committed to invest $175 million in infrastructure upgrades. But those upgrades are not for you, those upgrades are for them. One other question is, what happens when those upgrades aren't enough? Or when now you have this huge facility that you've upgraded to be able to handle the capacity, and then all of a sudden the data center decides, you know what, we're good, we're not gonna stay here, have a nice day. So one of the things I wanna say about that is, in my time as a water scientist and a researcher, I've sampled at Superfund sites. I've literally been there when the company said, no, I promise, we're not polluting, everything's okay here, and 10 years down the line, that company is debunked, and all of a sudden we find out we've got this awful chemical spill. And nobody knew about it, and now, guess who ends up paying that bill for that cleanup?
The residents?
The residents, the taxpayers, the American public has to pay for EPA to come in and clean up, pay for the DNR to come in and clean up, so. And I've seen it, and I've seen it.
Also, just to be clear, the $175 million in infrastructure upgrades, that's not a gift from Vantage, that is a TIF. That's tax exemption.
Tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For how many years?
What,
Uh,
so that might not ever happen?
Well,
We know it, right?
I mean, they'll pay it, but they're just getting basically a reduction on their tax bill they would have paid into the school district and everything otherwise.
So,
I can't hear, so I'm moving up.
oh, I'm sorry.
Good idea.
I'm being a good student.
I love it. So full admission, when I left the USGS, I got my license to be a substitute teacher. So I've been substitute teaching for the last 9 months. So I love it when the students come up front to listen, because otherwise I have to yell at the sophomore boys because they're talking over me. Like, I am trying to teach Algebra 2 here. If anybody needs to learn about the unit circle, that class will be after this one. So that's just a lot of, admittedly, that 5 million gallons a day, and you know, they talk about the closed loop and they talk about all this, but what has been happening in other hyperscale data centers is not matching what they're telling us.
I know they haven't shown it lately, but they used to do a commercial for Vantage and they claim that they're not gonna take any water from Lake Michigan.
Well, not if they're using 4 high capacity wells.
Yeah.
They claim they're not taking it directly out of the lake.
So they're taking it from
That's
city.
because they can't.
Fort Washington's pulling it for them.
Yeah.
Right.
But I did a lot of work with the International Joint Commission, which is the agreement, it's basically the agreement between the US and Canada that manages all international waters. Like there's a commission for the Great Lakes, and there's literally the Great Lakes Commission. And then I worked with the Boundary Waters Commission and the Great Lakes Commission. And like, I don't know if you remember a few years ago where Waukesha was trying to get water out of,
Lake Michigan?
and because they were trying to get water out of the Lake Michigan basin, which is different from the Mississippi basin, there was a huge blow up because Canada said, hard stop, no, you can't do that because you're gonna dump it into a completely different watershed. So, yeah, it was the Great Lakes Commission interaction with the Canada that's made that hard stop. So I'm assuming that's why they're bragging about the fact that they can't take water from Lake Michigan, because Canada said, hard pass no. But
We can't even get an answer from Vantage how much water they're gonna use per day.
I don't know if
if
they know.
anyone else has heard. I've heard 22,000 gallons to 1.5 mil MGD per day, per year, whatever. But they must know
I don't know
because
that
they
they
have plans. Well, they have plans in place, so they must know. I mean, it's ridiculous.
yeah, I don't know. That's.
It seems like an easy question.
It
an
should
easy
be. It
answer.
really should be. So, I went to one of the Port Washington City Council meetings. I mean, after this had been, I think it was right when they were like, it's approved, I don't know why anybody's talking anymore. It was at the hotel there. And Vantage, there was some representatives from Vantage there were some folks from Alliant there, or from the power company there. And I was just talking to people, I'm like, what are you here for? What's your interest? Why are you at this meeting? Because there's one here. And I accidentally talked to the Vantage guy, who's sitting in back, quiet, like trying to avoid all the dirty stairs. And I was like, so, you know, okay, you're with Vantage. I said, well, I'm a water scientist. I want to know, like, talk to me about this. Talk to me about the water thing, because that's admittedly what I care about most. And he goes, well, we are going to take the water and we're going to use it, and then we're going to return it cleaner than it came. It's like, really? Okay. And I said, how are you going to clean it better than it came? It's like, we are going to hire a third-party consultant. Okay. And what are they going to do? Well, they're going to clean the water. Okay. So it's not going to go through the municipal water system. Well, yeah, eventually, but the third party is going to clean it first. So it comes back cleaner to the Port Washington water system, better, like cleaner than we got it. Okay. Who is testing that it's cleaner? Like, who's doing the testing saying that you remove the chemicals that you put in there? He's like, well, the third party that we hired to clean it. I'm like, Like, I grew up on a farm. We referred to that as the fox guarding the hen house.
Exactly.
I'm like, that is literally somebody saying, no, don't look in here. Everything's fine. I promise we're doing everything that we promised. I feel like it's my teenage daughter being like, don't worry, Mom, my room is clean. You do not have to go in there. I promise it's clean. And look at him going, it's not clean. So that is one of the reasons that I, admittedly, that's one of the reasons I've become even more vocal. Because I do not think it's okay that a third party is being paid for by the company that they're supposedly monitoring and cleaning up for. Because again, and admittedly maybe I'm a little jaded because I've been in toxic sites and had to see the detrimental impacts of what happens when we have corporations that aren't responsible and don't actually take care of the planet like they said they are. So one of the things that I kept chewing around in my brain was when he said we're going to return it cleaner. Well, what chemicals are you putting in? How are you making sure you take those chemicals out? Because I'll tell you right now, to get PFAS out of water is really hard. Like filtration and reverse osmosis, all these things, it's really hard to get some of these chemicals out of that water. So what do you mean by it? Are we lowering nitrate levels, but then we increase another chemical? Are we getting rid of the biological material, that organic matter, by adding chlorine? And then we increase our disinfectant byproducts. Are we, So knowing what they mean by cleaner, having a list of the chemicals that they're using, making sure that those chemicals are actually removed from the water. The next thing that I really just, admittedly, just goes against everything in my body is the consultant hired by the company. That's not an independent company. It's not an independent consultant. So in federal environmental science, a third party means that they have no financial responsibility to the company that is they are testing. Again, the USGS, we actually acted as a third party for many different municipalities. We did studies with, or we still are doing studies, they are doing studies with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, making sure that their water, like we are testing their water so that they can say, this is a non-biased agency that is saying, we have no stake in this game, we are simply here to test the water. So the self-monitoring is the weakest form of compliance. So we need some real independent oversight.
Yep.
So I would say City of Port Washington says, okay, this is the company that is going to pay for it, or this is the company that we're going to select. Vantage has to give the City of Port Washington money so that that consultant can actually do the monitoring. So that there is no link to that, to Vantage itself. And the third is they really need to finish doing the lead inventory. The water treatment plant upgrade is supposed to be complete by August. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, it's a little behind schedule, but I think that's still pretty close to accurate.
Okay. And getting the service line locations identified. And if they do need to be replaced, getting any lead service lines replaced. Because pulling that much water through lead pipes is one of the problems that started to happen in Flint. These aging lead pipes, when you're pulling even higher capacity of water through those pipes, it's going to start to flake off. It's going to start to get more particulated. It's going to get into the drinking water more. And that's what happened in Flint. So I would really hate for Washington to end up having more drinking water problems than even like directly related to the data center. Yes?
If they're repurposing the 4 wells that they're keeping on the property, is it possible that those have lead pipes in them because they were on old farms?
No, usually well casings are not lead.
They're not?
No. Usually, depending upon, but for the most part, even old farm wells don't have lead casings.
But they shouldn't be using them to start with.
That's another.
I fully agree with you. Yes, yeah.
Those 4 wells that are drawing high capacity, can they be stealing water from the town's
Oh, yeah.
wells?
Oh, yeah.
There will be.
Share the
So-
water table.
I wish I had a whiteboard. I want my whiteboard to start drawing. Yeah.
What is the high capacity though? What do you mean by that? 60 gallons per?
So 60 gallons per minute.
Well, that's not super high capacity.
It's actually 70,
70?
70 is
Per-
down for high cap in Wisconsin.
Ah, thank you.
But that's
I was
4
gonna say,
wells.
we have a hydrogeologist.
But that's 4 wells, yeah.
70 gallons per minute is 100,000 gallons per day. So that's the cutoff.
Yeah. And admittedly, I haven't dug into the where those wells are located on the property, because they're kind of
Yeah, I
interspersed
haven't looked
throughout,
at it
right?
either, but yeah, they're, I
The
assume,
houses were all taken down that road.
yeah.
Well, isn't one under the utility building, which is where they store the water?
Sure.
I mean, what's
That's not
the normal
suspicious.
capacity of a home well? To put it in perspective.
15 or 20.
I was gonna say, we're talking less than 20 gallons a minute.
Okay.
Because think about if you have your water hose
Well,
on.
I don't know what to compare 60 gallons per minute to, so I'm just asking, what does my well
Right.
normally pull?
So
Okay,
if
so
you
it's
think
3
about it,
times.
like, if you have your outside faucet, filling up a 5 gallon pail,
Okay.
how fast is it filling up that 5 gallon pail? And admittedly, like, okay, if you have all of your outside spigots going at one time, it might be a little different, but you're not going to get more than 20 gallons a minute at a normal,
I think an average home uses what, 300 gallons a day or something?
something like that.
But they took out like 18 wells. They decommissioned 18 wells on the Vantage site, and they kept 4
Yeah.
going, so those other 18 aren't something.
No,
So.
no. But one of the concerns I would have, if you have 18 wells that are going at 20 gallons a day, let's even say 20 wells at 20 gallons a day, you're talking, or 20 gallons a minute, that's 400 gallons a minute, right? Is that right? Doing my math?
Yeah.
I need my whiteboard. Write it out for the kids. But that is, if we're, that is, and we're now looking at 70 gallon per minute capacity. You've already made up that 400 gallons in just those 3 months. So,
Like Saukville, will pull 1,000 gallons a minute out of one well out of the same aquifer.
right, yeah. And the Kona depression from a well that's taking that much. So Kona depression is when you have a well, think of it when you're drinking a shake and you get that kind of, that dip. The dip isn't at the bottom, the dip is at the top. So if you have a whole bunch of people that all have their straws in the same shake, and somebody is sucking at 10 times, like somebody has a straw like this, and you all have your straws like this Kona depression is gonna be a lot bigger than your little home well. So that's kind of one of the ways you can think of how it will actually affect the groundwater level locally. Yeah. Okay. So what can you do? I have 2 concrete tasks. First, if you're on a private well, get it tested. Test it now, get your baseline. It's the most powerful thing you can do as a homeowner. It protects you. It actually will tell you now if anything's wrong with your well. So I would recommend getting this done before any more construction happens. For UW-Stevens Point, there's a comprehensive homeowner package, and that includes chloroform. Chloroform is it's a naturally occurring chemical, or naturally occurring compound, but it's also, it can be from fecal contamination, whether that be animal or human fecal contamination. Not something you want to drink. So then we've got nitrates, pH, hardness, chloride, and then the metals panel. And the atrazine screen. So again, being near farm fields, there's probably some atrazine in there. I will say one of the interesting things that they're finding in Beaver Dam. It's a different topography, a different geology. In Beaver Dam, they have karst topography. They've got a lot of limestone really close to the surface over there, and a lot of their aquifer is in that karst topography. They are actually having a lot of trouble with vanadium and strontium. Vanadium is, again, these are naturally occurring in the environment. They're found in the bedrock, but they've been like washed out for thousands of years. That if they're in the naturally, like if the aquifer is not being like raised or lowered a lot, that's not a problem because it's kind of reached an equilibrium. But if you've got water tables like drying and re-wetting or wetting places that weren't wet before, think of it as a tea bag. You know, you get to an equilibrium if you put a tea bag in there, right? But if you take that tea bag out and you dry it, and you put it back in, you're gonna get more tea out of it. So that's kind of how you can think of some of this groundwater, these compounds coming out of the groundwater, or coming into the groundwater where they had been not as big of a problem before. So Stevens Point will do that, full metals panel and the atrazine screen. That is a mouthful. And that one's $191. The other one, and this is the one that I'm probably gonna do just because I found out last week that although I've been trying to come out and talk to people in Beaver Dam, in Port Washington, in Janesville, and other places about data centers, I found out last week that they're planning on putting one a mile from my house.
Oh no.
So I'm like, wow, I don't think they realize what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, I've already got the contacts, we can do this, we can do this. The other interesting about that one is that I live a mile and a half from the Wisconsin River. In sand country. I live over by Portage, and I'm again a mile and a half from the Columbia County power plant. So they already have the land, the power plant has the land, and they're planning on just building the data center right next to it. I guess on the bright side, they don't need a lot of high capacity power lines, but it is quite literally feet, like from here to the house away from the Wisconsin River. Like it is that close that they're planning on putting this thing.
Maybe it'll get stopped.
I'm gonna do everything in my power. Yes.
Have you got examples of anyone actually holding the construction company or whoever's using the data center accountable? Say you have your baseline and you can prove that 2 years later you've got these chemicals. How are they held account?
Well, that's actually one of the things that we're trying to figure out in Beaver Dam, because the people's wells have gone dry, and because the water quality has shifted so greatly. Like we have the data that shows, okay, not okay. Like we have that data, and there's a few people that have been trying to get the DNR to help, that have been trying to get EPA to help. One of the things that is kind of a misnomer is if you have a stormwater permit, that just means that you're being permitted to do this. It doesn't actually mean that anybody's checking on it. It doesn't actually mean that they've got people out there like verifying that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. Again, I've worked a lot with the Beaver Dam group, and one of the things that when it started to come out that the water quality was decreasing and they were finding more chemicals, Vantage put out, or Meta put out this lovely desktop hydrology report. And they talked about how they're filling in the wetlands, but don't worry, the wetland capacity is going up. And it couldn't possibly be us that's causing this problem, because the way the groundwater flows. And interestingly, I'm like, their arrows are the wrong way. Like, I'm looking at this going, I'm not sure what AI they use to draw these arrows, but obviously that's not a trained hydrologist that drew this, because I'm sitting there going, okay, so that arrow is literally pointing sideways across. So talking about groundwater levels, if you look at a map of how groundwater flows, you've all seen topographic maps, right? The circles of the hills and valleys, right? Water flows perpendicular, so it flows at a 90-degree angle to all of those elevation levels. So groundwater map is similar, that you have your height or your depth to groundwater, and water's gonna flow perpendicular to that. And they literally had water flowing between these things. Oh boy. But then at the very end, one of the last sentences of the whole report says, these are all done on a desktop. None of this has been independently verified in the field. So,
Just letting themselves off.
It's all lies.
yeah.
So do you think it could be both the construction company advantage and whoever's using it, whether it be OpenAI, Microsoft, both of them can be sued, both parties?
I think they're all linked, to be honest. Geosyntec is the company that did the desktop hydrology report. Geosyntec is owned by Blackstone. Blackstone is an energy company that has a lot of stake in ATC and WPS, and so you can.
It's a vicious circle.
It's
Follow the money trail.
you just follow me. But they were hired by Meta to do the they're all connected. So, yep. So you had a question?
I do. I live a half mile from the data center.
I'm so sorry.
I'm on well water.